After 5 years of hiding, a billionaire revealed a touching secret that left him in tears. Jack Thompson pushed his shopping cart down the fluorescent-lit aisle of Maplewood's grocery store, the whispers like knives aimed at the remnants of his dignity. After losing everything, he had traded the glimmer of tailored suits for frayed denim. The chipping paint of the old house his father built was a constant reminder of dreams he once clutched tightly. Now, he moved among the townsfolk as a specter of a past too grand, too painful to revisit, a billion-dollar shadow hiding in plain sight. He caught snippets of gossip, fragmented judgments that hung in the air, coiling around him. "That's him," a mother whispered to her child, her gaze piercing through the veil he endeavored to wear. "I heard he lost it all because of—" The sentence trailed off, laden with the weight of his family tragedy. The one that shattered his life, the one he sought to outrun even as he was hunted by the echoes of his past. The guilt clung to him, suffocating his spirit while igniting a flicker of defiance as he recalled the children waiting for him at the youth center. Jack found solace in their laughter, their dreams, especially one fierce spirit named Lily. 17, and consumed by ambition, her vision was bright but clouded by an economic storm. One afternoon, her eyes shone with possibility as she detailed her bold idea for a scholarship fund, a chance for kids like her to escape the relentless grind. Jack's heart tightened. The stirrings of hope he thought extinguished sparked wildly. He was drawn to her determination but pulled back, haunted by shadows of self-doubt that questioned his right to wield influence again. "What gives me the right to help?" he thought, the muscle in his jaw tensing at the affront. Just as Jack wrestled with his past, the news cycle rekindled old wounds. A scathing article resurfaced. The public scrutiny stunned him. How a lifestyle of wealth entangled with tragedy collided in the most devastating of ways. The guilt surged anew with each line he read, the memories flooding back like a rush of water too heavy to bear. The faces of lost family members haunted him, shattering his resolve. He felt like an imposter, one who dared to hope while standing on the graves of his past mistakes. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jack's internal struggle peaked one quiet evening beneath the flickering light of the center's community room. The faces of hopeful youth surrounded him, each one flushed with the audacity of youth. His breath caught as Lily approached him, her voice a determined whisper. "Mr. Thompson, you have a story. Why hide it? Share it. Your past can inspire us." The urgency hung between them, laden with vulnerability. Jack was at his most tangled, the sheer weight of the moment paralyzing him. Could his darkness illuminate their path? As he steadied himself, nerves prickled under his skin. The decision to speak his truth floated before him like a tightrope over a void. "There's something you all deserve to know about me," he began, every word trembling with its own gravity. Just then, the rustle of a newspaper breaking the silence cracked through his hope. The headline dissected his soul, ready to expose the skeletons he had fought so hard to bury, threatening to unravel this fragile promise of redemption as the air thick with tension closed around him. Jack's voice faltered, caught like a rabbit in headlights. The weight of the headline loomed behind him, suffocating his resolve. The room felt smaller, every pair of youthful eyes seemingly amplified, scrutinizing his every move. He felt the urge to retreat, to vanish behind the pile of distractions he had built around himself. Yet the look on Lily's face, a mixture of expectation and hope, anchored him. He took a breath, the words like barbed wire on his tongue. "I lost everything because I believed too deeply in what I had," he confessed, each syllable disassembling the cage he lived in. "I thought I could control fate, that wealth could shield me from the storms of life. But the storm found me. He glanced at Lily, the fire in her eyes pushing him forward. With every thread of his story woven, Jack felt a release, a cathartic unraveling he had not anticipated. My family, we had everything, but the shadows were much deeper than the light we cast. When tragedy struck, it swallowed me whole. Guilt gnawed at him again, but there was a flicker of something different now, a burgeoning sense of liberation. As he spoke of the life he had led, of the loss and degradation that followed, he noticed the young faces around him shifting. Their unyielding attention mingled with the empathy building like a quiet tide. Jack poured out the details, the regrets, the faux pas of arrogance that danced dangerously alongside his wealth. Words flowed from him like a river rediscovering its course, unearthing everything he'd fought to suppress. Sometimes we live in a gilded cage, he articulated with rising fortitude. What I once saw as a fortress was nothing but a prison built on pretense. It was easier to tell them of his failures than the dramatic rise and fall. Exposing those intimate wounds felt strangely like opening a gift. The more he revealed, the more buoyant he became. He was learning to walk on the tightrope with a newfound steadiness. Lily leaned forward, her expression reflecting warmth and understanding. She was not just a dreamer. She was a mirror to his vulnerability. Her response didn't seek pity nor closure. It demanded validation. You're not a ghost, Mr. Thompson. You can stand tall and show us how to rise again. We need your experience, your journey. The revelation transformed his perspective. He saw how their hope could intertwine with his. For the first time, he realized his life story wasn't just a burden he had to carry alone. It could be a beacon for others. His moment of sincerity ignited a gently simmering resolve within him, a desire not just to survive, but to thrive. I'd like to help you set up the scholarship fund, he announced, each word rippling with determination. To inspire other kids to seize their potential. Together, we can change the narrative. Enthusiasm lit up the room, the air shifting palpably. But even as encouragement filled their faces, an unsettling thought nagged at him. This commitment came with vulnerability. Jack had laid bare his truth, but he could feel shadows lurking around the corners of his newfound space, the risk of public scrutiny looming just as heavily as before. As hope entwined with fear, he knew he must face the impending storm head-on. The moment had arrived. He had to gather strength from his past failures, face the inevitable backlash of his re-entry into a world that thrived on judgment and headlines, and forge a path toward a better legacy. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but as Jack prepared to embrace this new journey, he heard Lily's voice cutting through his inner turmoil. Are you ready for what's next? A question that so perfectly encapsulated the future before him, igniting both trepidation and excitement. He realized with a rush of adrenaline, this was just the beginning, and the real test was yet to come. As Jack faced the vibrant crowd, a murmur of expectation rippled through the room. His confession hung between them, a fragile thread of vulnerability. Yet, in the midst of that flickering fear, an instinct began to awaken, a barely recognizable ambition. The scholarship fund he had proposed wasn't just an act of giving. It was a commitment to rebuild his own fractured identity. In the days that followed, Jack found himself restless, the pull of purpose propelling him forward. He needed to outline a plan, a viable structure for the scholarship. Sitting at his desk, he contemplated the intricate details of what he wanted to achieve. Not just funding for education, but mentorship. A lifeline for youth struggling against their circumstances. Every stroke of the pen ignited memories, pulling him deeper into his past. The late-night conversations about dreams he once had, connections he had forged with mentors who believed in him despite his youthful arrogance. Those moments of guidance had shaped his early ambitions, and they filled him with resolve now. But just as quickly as his determination surged, doubt crept in. The scars of betrayal and failure whispered, what if he failed again? What if the expectations were too high, the weight too heavy? He could envision the headlines before they even broke. Fallen billionaire tries to change narrative, fails miserably. The thought sent a chill down his spine. His hand hesitated over the paper. Stepping back, he forced his breath to even out, grounding himself in the present. This was different. There was no facade to maintain, no excess wealth he had to lean on to prove his worth. This was raw, honest intention, and he felt its power coursing through him. He remembered Lily's face, her fervent belief that he could guide them through shared experience. It spurred him onward. As he began to draft specific criteria for the scholarship, calling on old connections to develop a supportive network, something unexpected occurred. His phone buzzed, pulling his attention into the digital world where an ireful blog post caught his eye. Thompson's weak attempt at redemption, it declared, riddled with cynical undertones. The author auctioned off his past, spinning tales of extravagance and personal tragedy wrapped in ironic criticism. Each word felt like sharp blades against his resolve. Frustration clawed at him, but then clarity sliced through the haze. This was the confrontation he had known would come, his past no longer a specter haunting him, but a tangible force that would shape this journey. He realized he needed to harness those reactions. Instead of cowering behind defense mechanisms, he would confront the narrative head-on. A plan began to form. Share the raw, unvarnished parts of his journey with those who wished to hear and redirect the flood of negativity into lessons learned. Perhaps even involve the blog author as part of a broader dialogue about growth and redemption. That night, Jack pulled out his laptop, fingers poised over the keys. He began to draft an open letter, a missive that would lay bare not just his regrets, but also the triumphs dusted beneath the failures. He would invite the public to witness his process, not as a savior, but as a fellow traveler in life's complex landscape. As he finished the letter, anticipation pulsed through him. This was a step, not just in redefining his legacy, but also addressing those shadows lingering just outside his periphery. Would this move attract scrutiny? Perhaps. But the purpose was more potent than the fear. His eyes fell on the final sentence, a firm declaration penned with conviction, and he hit send, exposing his vulnerable journey to the world, inviting them in while bracing for possible backlash. It was a challenge, one that could amplify his resolve through engagement or bury him deeper in judgment. As he reclined back in his chair, heart racing, Jack felt the ground beneath him shift again. The words of Lily rang in his ears. "Are you ready for what's next?" What he realized now was that this moment was not just about risking exposure, but also tightly entwined with an undeniable call to action. Now, standing on the precipice of the unknown, he faced something far greater than his past, the daunting and thrilling prospect of actualizing future aspirations. Just as he felt the tremor of excitement, a new message beeped through, one that would change everything. It was a response from the very blog author, whose words had ignited his latest initiative, a challenge wrapped in skepticism, but holding the promise of dialogue. Was he ready to engage with the very public opinion that threatened his future? One question loomed larger than all others as he prepared for the confrontation that awaited him. What if this was the moment he could prove redemption was, indeed, possible? Jack stared at his screen, breath caught in his throat as he processed the response to his open letter. The blog author's words, dripping with skepticism, yet decorated with a willingness to engage, felt like the blade of a double-edged sword. He had anticipated criticism, yes, but the offer of dialogue initiated something deeper within him. The prospect of rational discourse felt alien. Had he ever truly embraced the discomfort of vulnerability in such stark terms? Every that flickered through the screen carried an unrelenting challenge, probing beneath the surface of Jack's courage. What if he said the wrong thing? What if he was still, in essence, the same person who walked the halls of investment meetings filled with hubris? The shadows of his failures threatened to cloud the light of his newfound purpose, and doubt, ever present, wrapped around him like a familiar cloak. He needed clarity. With a resolve born from the days fueling his initiative, Jack decided to reach out to the author directly. He composed a response, his fingertips dancing across the keyboard. "Thank you for your candid feedback. I'm eager to engage in a conversation. Let's discuss how to transform the narrative together." He pressed send, heart racing anew with anticipation and fear. Minutes turned into agonizing hours filled with reflection, each tick of the clock echoing the tumult of his thoughts. Jack's past hesitations clawed at him. His mind wandered to those who had made a difference in his life. Each mentor and guide had been a pillar of support amid his turbulent childhood, instant knowledge bubbling forth from his subconscious. Without their faith in him, he wouldn't be here, daring to cultivate a new identity. So why did he feel so utterly alone now? Drawing a deep breath, he flipped through his notebook, crammed with ideas and sketches for the scholarship program. Those thoughts took form, beckoning him to breathe life into their pages. A structured outline of goals and methods emerged. He focused on mentorship programs, career workshops, and strong networks he could foster for aspiring students. The notion of this scholarship expanded beyond mere financial support. It was an investment, reaching deep into the core of future generations. But as Jack penned down each detail, he faced a stark realization. This transformation required more than just structured plans. It called for him to authentically show up, unmasked and genuine. It was time to confront the public once more, to dismantle the facades he had hidden behind. He needed to convey the encounters that had redefined his path, laying bare the lessons and failures instead of placing them just below a veneer of success. A glimmer of determination ignited within him. He would invite those willing to traverse this journey with him. "Where there's light, there can be change," he muttered to himself. Another email alerted him. The name at the top sent a shiver of nervous anticipation racing through him. It was the author of the blog. The message contained a proposed time for their discussion, a virtual interview to explore both sides of Jack's journey. The idea of sitting before the public eye, honest and raw, thrilled and terrified him in equal measure. An unsettling question lingered at the edge of his thoughts. Would they embrace his empathy and sincerity, or would Jack become the punchline in another harsh critique? As he gazed out of the window at the growing shadows of twilight, the weight of the moment sunk deeper. In mere days, he would bare his soul not just to one person, but potentially to an audience hungry for his story. He rested his face in his palms, thoughts racing. The fear flipped over, revealing another side. This was exactly the opportunity he had hoped for, a chance to stand in his truth. If redemption could blossom from his mistakes, could it also extend to those who might learn through him? Daring to imagine an alternative narrative, he crafted plans for their conversation. Jack gathered his insights into a compact list, preparing for what he hoped to turn into an illuminating dialogue. With every click of his keyboard and every new idea that took shape, he felt less like the fallen magnate and more like a leader reborn. The path to redemption was winding, filled with risks and revelations, but it was within reach. As he saved his work and prepared for tomorrow's conversation, a portion of Jack realized the pursuit of redemption didn't promise comfort or glamour. It demanded courage and honesty. What awaited him during this conversation would not merely dictate the next chapter, but could very well forge the trajectory of his longer journey towards genuine transformation. But could he, amidst it all, shatter the walls he had built around himself and emerge with newfound strength? Time would tell, but the question lingered. Was revelation worth the risk of rejection? The next morning, as sunlight crept into his room, Jack awoke with renewed energy, the anticipation of the day hanging heavy in the air. He had barely slept. His mind tumbled with thoughts of his upcoming interview. How could he distill his journey into something valuable and meaningful? He could no longer afford the luxury of hesitation. Time was slipping away, and so was the chance to make an authentic impact. As he prepared, Jack began to mentally storyboard the core messages he wanted to convey. "Failure is a stepping stone," he mumbled, pacing the room. Each word morphed into a mantra, fueling a burgeoning sense of purpose. He was no longer just a vessel for his past mistakes, but a bridge connecting hardship to hope for others, who might find themselves lost on similar paths. The minutes melted into each other as he practiced delivering his ideas aloud, allowing them to settle into his bones. He was no longer the man who shied away from vulnerability, cloaked in the armor of his past successes. No. Today marked a landfall of acceptance and transparency, but a sliver of fear still clung to him, gnawing at the edges of his confidence. Could he articulate his truth in a way that resonated without slipping into rehearsed corporate jargon? In pursuit of grounding himself, Jack decided to revisit his notebook, each scribble a monument to his thoughts and dreams. As he flipped through, a series of reflections popped out, snippets of conversations with mentors, reminders of missteps and their painful lessons. People matter more than profits. Relationships, not transactions. That phrase pulsed like a heartbeat within him, guiding his perspective as he prepared for the discussion ahead. His phone buzzed, jolting him from his reverie. The interview time was approaching, and with a deep breath, he connected to the digital platform where they would conduct the dialogue. The familiar interface felt surreal. In a moment, he would lay bare his journey before the world. The screen lit up, and there she was, the author, her expression poised yet curious. Jack could feel the weight of her gaze, questioning and probing. Silence stretched between them, amplifying the tension. "Thanks for joining me today, Jack," she began, her tone balanced with professionalism and warmth. "You've stepped back into the limelight after years away. What has prompted this decision?" Jack's heart raced as he plunged into his response. "I believe it's time to share the lessons I've learned, the struggles. I want to contribute something meaningful, especially to the next generation." The words rolled off his tongue. He could feel truth drench his voice. "Can you elaborate on what those lessons are?" she pressed. With each question, Jack unearthed memories, the heavy moments that had tested his resolve. He spoke of his early ambition, the pressures of wealth, and the emptiness success brought when devoid of connection. He shared the transformational impact of mentorship in his life, how the realization of contributing to others became his North Star. As their conversation unfolded, he began to feel the layers of tension peel away, revealing corners of honesty and introspection. Yet a flicker of doubt still sparked inside him. Was it enough? Just as he ventured to recount a poignant story of a young man he'd once mentored, one overcome by loss yet determined to rise, the author's next question pierced the air. "How do you reconcile your past with the impact you wish to have now? Can you truly change, Jack?" The question caught him off guard. Instinctively, Jack felt a chill of vulnerability wash over him. Could he really convince others not only of his capability, but also of his sincerity? In that moment of hesitance, the weight of his truth pressed against him like an anvil. He inhaled, welcoming the unease. "I'm still learning. I don't have all the answers, but I promise to be open about my journey. Every failure is a lesson, and every lesson shapes my future." His voice trembled slightly, raw honesty threading through his words. But it wasn't just about what he said. It was about laying bare his self-doubt alongside his aspirations, showing that growth came from grappling through uncertainty. The author nodded thoughtfully, her eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "And if you face backlash or criticism again, how will that shape your next steps?" Jack's pulse quickened, each heartbeat echoing the underlying fear of being judged, ridiculed, or misunderstood. But beneath it all was an ember of resolve. Facing criticism was part of my old life. Now I embrace it. Feedback is a chance to grow, to reflect on my real character. He realized just then that this was the crux of his journey, a battle between the man he was and the man he aspired to be, unfolding in conversations that demanded authenticity. Embracing the change meant opening the door to fear and discomfort while stepping boldly into the light. As the interview wrapped up, Jack felt an exhilarating mix of relief and anxiety. He had shared his truth, but would it resonate? The words hung in the air like a challenge unresolved. How would the world respond? The thought surged unbidden. Would his intention to connect outweigh the risk of being dismissed? He could only hope so. As he logged off, Jack sensed that this was just the beginning. His path was emerging, but the road ahead teemed with unknowns. In the distance, a small voice whispered, perhaps the next challenge would be facing the critics directly. What if they sought to silence him? Would he stand his ground, or retreat once more behind his walls? Jack leaned back in his chair, staring at the blank screen where the interview had just unfolded. It felt surreal. He had poured his soul into that conversation, yet a lingering apprehension loomed over him. He couldn't tell if he had succeeded in connecting with his audience or if he had merely given them another story to consume without substance. The fear of being misinterpreted surged again, clenching in his stomach like a vice. In an attempt to ground himself, Jack shifted his focus from the computer to the notebook that still lay open on his desk. His fingers traced the edges of his jotted reflections, each line a testament to moments of clarity and turmoil. The path to transformation is paved with setbacks, he whispered, hoping to breathe some confidence into the assertion. This time, he would not allow doubt to dictate his actions. Determination swelled within him. If he truly intended to connect with people, he could no longer hide in the shadows. Vulnerability was not just about sharing failures. It was also about inviting others into his world, challenges and all. He flipped the notebook to a fresh page and began to brainstorm on how to proactively engage with the very critics he had fearfully anticipated. What if setbacks became dialogue, not obstacles? With each word he wrote, he built a framework for a series of public discussions where he could share his insights and strategies for overcoming adversity. He envisioned himself in a town hall setting, encouraging dialogue. Conversations amplify understanding, he jotted down, feeling a spark ignite. This was the way forward. Yet a sensation nagged at the back of his mind. What if this new move drew more scrutiny? The buzz of his phone interrupted his thoughts, pulling him from contemplation. It was a message from a peer in the industry who had been a sounding board for his ideas. "Jack, great to see you back. Would love to grab coffee and discuss your plans," it read. Though an invitation to reconnect felt warm, apprehension twisted his stomach anew. This was someone who had thrived in the world of critiques and praise, yet Jack remembered their past discussions full of judgments about authenticity and ambition. What if he didn't measure up to their expectations? He hesitated, fingers hovering above the screen. Was this another test of his resolve? Inviting feedback felt both thrilling and intimidating. In the spirit of growth, he typed a response, suggesting a time to meet. Each keystroke intertwined his trepidation with anticipation, a calculated risk, but a risk nonetheless. As the day wore on, Jack poured his energy into preparing for his upcoming meeting, outlining points that articulated his mission of honesty and empathy. He knew he had to share a personal narrative that went beyond the superficial successes. Conversations about having a mentor shaped his character felt essential, and he considered how sharing the details of his difficult moments could invite deeper understanding. As he practiced his delivery in front of the mirror, he began to feel more at ease with his story. But doubts crept back in. Would they view him as a relic of the past, a cautionary tale, or as someone who evolved through his experiences? His phone buzzed again, this time with notifications flooding in. Clips from his interview had made their way onto social media, distinctly highlighting segments of his vulnerability. Comments varied, from admiration to skepticism. The feedback felt like a whirlwind, a mixture of inspiration and criticism that wrapped around him, showing the uneven landscape ahead. Jack sank into his chair, mind racing. What if he wasn't ready for this? What if the old Jack, the one terrified of critique, lingered just beneath the surface, waiting to unravel everything he had built anew. The contradictory emotions swirled within him, pushing him to confront the very essence of his identity. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes for a moment. This was his chance, not just to speak, but to deeply resonate with others. As his pulse steadied, Jack made a silent promise to embrace the discord, to let both criticism and praise serve as building blocks for personal and professional evolution. The rhythm of his heart began to steady as he recognized that the next day would mark a new chapter. It was time to welcome direct engagement with his critics, to face them not with fear, but with an open heart, ready for a dialogue of sincerity. In the stillness of the room, he realized the pivotal truth. Embracing his vulnerability could either be his undoing or his ultimate strength. The path before him was uncertain, but was he ready to step forward and embrace whatever came next? Jack opened his notebook to a new page. Face the critics, invite the conversation. With that fresh energy, he knew the time had come to stand tall against the waves of scrutiny, eager to earn his place in the dialogue of authenticity. Could he maintain his newfound resolve when faced with the realities of public opinion? He felt a mix of excitement and trepidation swell within him, underlining the electrifying possibility that awaited him. Tomorrow was approaching, and with it came an essential choice. How would he engage not only with the voices of encouragement, but also with those voices of doubt that echoed in his mind? The sun broke through the morning clouds as Jack prepared himself for the meeting that would either set him on a new trajectory or push him back into the shadows he had fought so hard to escape. He glanced at his reflection in the mirror, seeing not just the man he was, but the man he had the potential to become. Self-doubt still clung to him like a stubborn shadow, but he pushed it aside, favoring the sense of purpose that filled his chest. As he approached the cafe, the familiar scent of coffee wafted through the air, blending with a slight hint of pastry. Inside, his peer, Clara, was already seated at a small table, her laptop open, a reflection of her own ambitions shimmering in its screen. Her reputation in the industry preceded her. She was one of the few who seemed to migrate effortlessly from scrutiny to praise, and Jack felt the weight of her expectations as he slid into the chair across from her. "Jack, it's good to see you," she smiled, but it didn't entirely mask the critical eye she held on him. "I watched your interview. Very brave stuff." "Thanks," he replied, gripping his coffee cup tightly as if it could anchor him against the waves of uncertainty crashing against his resolve. "I felt like it was time to share the truth." "Truth can be tricky," Clara remarked, her tone light, yet the ambiguity of her words sent a shiver through him. "You can end up misrepresenting your journey if you're not careful. Authenticity matters, but context is key." Her subtle challenge reverberated within him, stirring the fear he'd hoped to quell. Jack could visualize the threads of his narrative unraveling at her words. What if he hadn't contextualized enough? What if he had misstepped in his storytelling? As they discussed his plans for public dialogues, Jack suddenly recalled the framework he had sketched out in his notebook. "I want to emphasize that we can engage in conversations about our vulnerabilities. They can help others rally through their own challenges. Engagement is great, but don't forget, you're inviting scrutiny." With each response, Jack felt as though he was navigating a minefield. Her words showcased exactly what he feared, being starkly analyzed in every upcoming dialogue. He took a deep breath, forcing the apprehension down. What if this was the moment to confront his anxiety head-on? "Clara," he began, leaning forward slightly. "What if I actually turned the tables? What if, instead of avoiding critique, I actively invited it into my discussions? Encouraging others to openly critique my experiences could foster understanding, right?" He watched as a thoughtful expression crossed her face. "That could be risky, but it has potential. It might set the stage for deeper connections. Just be prepared to handle the fallout. Critics aren't always kind." Jack pondered her words. The idea of turning critiques into an opportunity for dialogue brought a new wave of courage. Strategy shifted in his mind like pieces of a puzzle coming together. If he could build relationships out of constructive criticism, he might find both affirmation and growth within the discomfort. "I'm ready to sit in that discomfort," he declared, his voice brimming with newfound resolve. "I want these conversations to not just be about me presenting my journey, but about creating safe spaces for others to share theirs. The more we engage in this dialogue, the more insights we can all gain." Clara leaned back, her eyes sparking with approval. "That's the spirit, Jack. Just remember, the criticism will be there too. You'll have to be prepared to confront it without turning defensive." This realization mirrored Jack's internal struggle. Could he truly sit with criticism without a need to react? With increasing excitement, he began to envision how he would structure these dialogues, balancing vulnerability with the strength needed to handle opposition. But a shadow of doubt crept back in. Could he maintain this approach when faced with stark, harsh criticism? As Clara and he parted ways, he felt a swell of energy mixed with trepidation surge throughout him. Walking away, Jack's mind raced, considering everything they discussed, each possibility intertwining with uncertainty. What lay behind the horizon was yet to be discovered, but the discomfort of the unknown felt invigorating, transformative even. Could this be the key to his evolution? Jack resolved to step forward, but not without trepidation. He had a plan, yet each dialogue was bound to reveal more about himself than he could foresee. With the challenge looming ahead, Jack encountered the crucial question that would shape his next steps. Was he truly prepared to confront the full spectrum of feedback, both criticism and support, that awaited him on this path? Jack spent the next few days poring over his plan, meticulously crafting his dialogue framework around vulnerability and the invitation for criticism. Each session he envisioned was not merely a stage for him, but a shared platform for others to engage and converse honestly. While the prospect of leading these discussions imbued him with excitement, anxiety gnawed persistently at the edges of his resolve. He visualized the first meeting, a small gathering of individuals who had shared experiences, and perhaps even wounds like his own. An image formed in his mind, a circle of chairs, the warm glow from overhead lights casting a cozy atmosphere. But within that warmth, he could also see the skepticism that might loom, a circle of judgment instead of trust. What if they resisted? What if they criticized him harshly? Each scenario felt equally possible, each pulling at his confidence. The evening before the gathering, Jack stood alone in his kitchen, stirring a pot of water for tea. The rhythmic movement offered a monotony that allowed his thoughts to swirl freely. What if engaging in open conversation simply isolated him further? Finding the courage to expose himself felt daunting. The metaphorical walls of protection he had so carefully erected now loomed tall and intimidating. Yet, a flicker of determination kept igniting within him. He recalled Clara's encouragement, the thought of building connection through discomfort. He decided to draft an opening statement for the gathering, a way to communicate his intention effectively. Sitting down with pen and paper, he let the words flow. These conversations are a space for us to share openly, not just to connect, but to learn from one another. I'm inviting criticism, not to tear myself down, but to understand and hopefully grow. Together, we can create something meaningful. That night, Jack wrestled with doubt. After understanding the potential value in vulnerability, he came face to face with a different question. Could he handle the weight of exposure? Each wave of fear was greeted with a countercurrent of resolve. And although he trailed off to sleep under a blanket of anxiety, the seed of hope had already been planted. The next day, facing the blend of excitement and dread was palpable. When the doorbell finally rang, Jack took a deep breath before opening the door. The small group had arrived, each member a stranger brought together by shared struggles. He invited them in, encouraging open dialogue from the start. Their voices mingled, and slowly, the air thick with apprehension began to lighten. As Jack shared his story, his tentative tone revealed the cracks of vulnerability he invited them to explore. Responses flowed, and he noted how their openness transformed the room from a space of judgment into one of understanding. There was a power in candor, and for the first time, he felt the weight of self-doubt begin to lift. Yet, as the session progressed, not every critique was constructive. Some comments cut through the layers of camaraderie he sought to build, igniting his insecurities anew. He felt the sting of harsh words, a visceral reaction tightening his throat. Engaging constructively with criticism required a level of resilience he was only beginning to grasp. Jack paused, overwhelmed by a mixture of emotions. He wanted to react defensively, but instead chose to absorb their words. In that moment, he recalled Clara's guidance, a lifeline in a rushing sea. He leaned into the discomfort and began to engage with the criticism rather than retreating. I appreciate your honesty. What you've said here today is challenging, but it's also precisely what's needed to push our understanding forward. The discourse turned, gradually shifting back toward a constructive nature as others began to echo his approach. The discomfort evolved into a collaborative effort, with every voice contributing to the tapestry of their shared experience. Leaving the gathering, Jack felt both elated and deflated. He had experienced the rawness of truth, his own vulnerability laid bare alongside others. Amid contemplation, he couldn't shake the feeling that this journey was only beginning. Would he manage to sustain this level of engagement when faced with even harsher criticisms down the line? What if his next dialogue held even more complexity than the first? As uncertainty pressed against him, a new question emerged, larger than the last. How far could he stretch his willingness to confront not just criticism, but deeper fears and judgments? Would he be able to transform these encounters into meaningful growth for himself and others? With this weight, Jack stood at the precipice of his evolving path, ready to navigate whatever challenges loomed ahead. Jack felt an unsettling energy as he paced in his living room in the wake of the first meeting. While a small part of him reveled in the thrill of having shared his vulnerability, the pressing weight of others' critiques bore heavily on his heart. He closed his eyes, attempting to recall the warmth of connection, but the sting of harsh words clawed at him anew. He knew the journey ahead required more than just participation. It demanded a willingness to face the discomfort head-on. He spent the following days in introspection, each moment a deep dive into his psyche. The feedback that had unsettled him echoed in his mind, twirling around like an unwelcome dance partner. He recognized that the true test lay not merely in enduring criticism, but also in harnessing its potential to reinvent him. With determination bubbling within, he sketched out a plan. He would prepare for an even deeper level of engagement in the next session. Staring at the blank page in front of him, Jack forced himself to confront the critiques and their implications. He took a breath and began to unveil a new framework for the next meeting. Rather than solely inviting criticism, he would introduce the concept of constructive storytelling. This called on everyone to share their experiences and to articulate the lessons learned, weaving their narratives into a collective tapestry of resilience. He faced a moral dilemma. Was he ready to open himself to an even greater possibility for judgment, knowing not everyone might reciprocate? He was now preparing not only to lead discussions, but to build bridges of understanding in a more profound way. With this revelation came the awareness that constructive storytelling required the same vulnerability he had displayed before, but layered with a readiness for resilience. This dual approach would establish a foundation for mutual learning and acceptance. As the next gathering approached, Jack found himself anxious yet invigorated. He visualized participants engaged in meaningful discourse, their voices merging harmoniously rather than clashing. The thoughts of leading yet another round of conversations filled him with both anticipation and dread. The tension between excitement and fear shifted within him like a live wire, crackling with potential. On the evening of the session, the atmosphere hung heavy with anticipation. Jack took a deep breath, finding solace in the familiarity of the warm glow illuminating the circle of chairs. He was no longer just a leader. He had transitioned to a facilitator, determined to steer the group toward insightful exchanges. As people settled into their seats, he sensed a different energy among them. Perhaps the discomfort and vulnerability he had introduced the last time had sown the seeds of greater trust. "We grow through stories," Jack began, his voice steady. "Today, let us explore our journeys and embrace the lessons within them." As others began to share, Jack felt a shift. With each story unveiled, a dynamic of empathy flourished. Yet again, he realized the fragility of this exchange. While some offered constructive insights, others struggled to articulate their thoughts, revealing their own insecurities. A particular participant, Jessica, lashed out with harsh, unfiltered feedback about a story he shared, cutting through the dialogue like a knife. Jack's gut tightened, his natural instinct to defend himself flaring. Yet deep within, he recognized this moment, not as a failure, but as a pivotal encounter, a fork in the road that would compel him to either retreat or rise anew. Silently, he wrestled with the urge to withdraw and the compelling challenge to engage once again. In that instant, surrounded by raw honesty, he leaned in. "I understand that this is hard," he began. "But I want to understand what you felt. Your perspective matters." Navigating the tension, he guided the conversation back to the structure he had envisioned, allowing others to contribute their perspectives. The group slowly shifted. Shields of defensiveness began to fall as they embraced the journey of each story shared. As the session drew to a close, Jack left the gathering with urgent questions boiling in his mind. Who was he becoming through these exchanges? Could he sustain this environment in the face of ongoing vulnerability? And more critically, how far he was willing to go, risking his own emotional safety for something that could ultimately unite or divide. With these thoughts swirling, Jack stepped out into the cool night air, determined to explore the uncharted territories of connection and conflict that lay ahead. The next meeting promised more complexities, pushing the boundaries further. The moment of truth was approaching, and he could feel it in every fiber of his being. Would he have the courage to continually confront not just others' judgments, but his own deepest fears? Jack stood at the cusp of what felt like a new dawn, a definitive turning point illuminated by the lessons learned in dialogue and vulnerability. The last few months had been a series of escalating confrontations with both critics and with himself. He had ventured into the unknown, leading discussions precise with emotions, narratives, and raw truth, all while striving to transcend the relentless shadow of his past. In this crucial moment, clarity washed over him. He had to consolidate not just his former identity, but also forge a new one built not on wealth, but on narratives that bridge the chasm between struggle and resilience. Each meeting with the group transformed into a mosaic of diverse experiences, and Jack realized he was not simply leading, he was genuinely connecting. As the next gathering approached, a sudden wave of anticipation surged within him. This was not merely about facilitating discussions anymore. He understood that he had the opportunity to create real impact, not just through teaching others, but through an authentic exchange of stories that could resonate on a profound level. On the evening of the meeting, as he welcomed an eager group into his home, he sensed the incredible potential swirling among them, a collective spirit willing to share, learn, and grow together. Using the previous meeting's feedback, he meticulously structured their encounter. "Tonight," he said straightforwardly, "we're exploring the vital role of accountability in our journeys. Who holds you accountable, and how do those relationships shape your narrative?" As conversations unfurled, Jack noticed a palpable shift. Participants began nurturing each other's voices, weaving a rich tapestry of insights that magnified bonds and fostered a sense of community, the very essence he had long yearned for. Moments of laughter mingled with those of palpable grief. Wounds laid bare transformed into sources of strength. Partnerships emerged, momentarily displacing the old stigmas of judgment that harbored within each member. Indulging into their shared stories, Jack sensed his heart swell. The previous specters of self-doubt faded. He was not merely a facilitator anymore, but a catalyst for profound transformation. The depth of dialogue nurtured a space where vulnerability served to uplift rather than press down, pushing everyone to confront accountability in a way that redefined their relationships with honesty. By the meeting's end, Jack took a moment to reflect on how far he had come since those initial, dread-laden hours wandering grocery aisles, steeped in self-reproach and silence. As the discussion simmered down, he felt more assured than he had in years, embodying a solid confidence rooted in the essence of collaboration and empathy. As participants shared commitments forged from their discussions, mentorships, shared goals, and headway toward the scholarship fund, Jack felt something beautiful coalesce within him. He had achieved not only personal growth, but had sparked momentum within others. Their eyes, alight with potential, mirrored the hopeful flame he felt ignite in his own chest, illuminating the path forward. Not as a fallen billionaire seeking redemption, but as a resourceful, flourishing human being enhancing the aspirations of youth like Lily. Standing outside under the night sky, reflecting on the unmistakable shift in purpose, he recognized that he had conquered the inner turbulence weighing him down. Instead of fearing judgment, he embraced connections. Instead of running from his past, he actively transformed it into a legacy of growth. In that moment of understanding, an undeniable achievement crystallized. He was no longer defined by loss, but rather forged through it. Jack Thompson, once hidden in shadows, now stepped boldly into his truth. He had taken the substantial leap from a place of isolation into recognition, once more claiming influence, not for wealth, but for meaningful change. It was time to finalize the scholarship fund with Lily, a testament to the very essence of the journey they had together, to share stories and ambitions that could reshape futures. And so, as dawn whispered faintly on the horizon, he made a pact with himself. To keep the circle growing, to be fortified through the ebb and flow of dialogue, to remain present, accountable, and ever embracing of the challenge. Standing tall and with unyielding confidence, he whispered into the cool breeze, "I am ready for what's next." Now, to anyone who is inspired by Jack's journey toward growth and redemption, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Please, leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. And comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters in this community. Let's keep the conversation going.